Away you go, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. To all members of the Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee to be held in the Guildhall on Wednesday the 8th of July at 4 p.m. And I'll take the register. Councillor John Boyle, Councillor Tina Burke, Councillor Sean Carr, Councillor Angela Dobbins, apologies, Councillor Mary Durkin, Councillor Stephen Edwards, Councillor Paul Fleming, Councillor Christopher Jackson, Councillor Eamon McCann, Alderman Ryan McCready.
He's coming later.
Okay. Councillor Rory McHugh, Alderman Andrew McCain, Alderman David Ramsey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Karen. And we'll move on to item number 3. Any declarations of interest to be declared or can be declared later on in the meeting? None at the moment. And to item 4, Chairperson's business.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry. More see in terms of the Strathfoyle Greenway.
Yep.
I would sort of sit in a formal type group around that, down in that locality.
That's okay. That's okay. Chairperson, item 4, Chairperson's business. I don't have any business, so but I have a few indicated speakers here, and the first one is Alderman Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this will help us clear up an issue that I brought up at Council with reference to telephones. We were led to believe that phones were removed from members of staff, their private phones, which obviously we felt was an issue, but at the last meeting you confirmed that, Karen, that did not happen. Okay, so I said I would try and find out more information. Well, since that I've now discovered that there was a staff notice sent out about personal mobile phones to the staff, effective from Wednesday the 17th to 6th 20. So there's obviously been confusion because there wasn't the phones removed, but they're basically been told here that mobile phones must be placed in lockers prior to the beginning of shift, and mobile phones can be accessed during tea and lunch breaks. So obviously this came out of the blue, and the questions obviously are policy and is there a possible breach of rights here? And we can only believe this may be linked to whistleblowing. And we know that whistleblowing is perfectly legal, but we basically were just calling for an explanation as to how this happened and why, to hopefully get to the bottom of this here, because it is very concerning for members of staff, obviously, but for ourselves as well, because we feel it may be a breach of rights. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Karen.
Through you, Chair, thank you for bringing that to my attention, members, and I will liaise with our Human Resources Department, and we can clarify that issue with the member. Thank you.
Councillor John Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to that, can we find out if this email was sent to a select group of staff, or did it go to, maybe Alderman Ramsey knows, or did it go to all members of staff of the council?
Is this issue here, Alderman McCain? Yeah. That's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I suppose just the question around this is if there's a mobile phone policy, can we be furnished with it to relate to it and to learn from it? And I suppose an issue, mobile phones is becoming a big topic in a lot of the workplaces, and I suppose if there is a policy, it may incorporate the lone worker. Because a lot of the time, the person being able to hold on to the phone would be vital for a lone worker, or if they were, working somewhere isolated or something like that. So if there is a mobile phone policy, could we be furnished with it, please? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Members, I will discuss this with the Chief Executive and the Head of Human Resources. Clearly, staffing matters are normally dealt with between the officers and the unions and brought to members for their information. And I'll make sure that all of these issues have been considered in that vein. And if there's any further reports we need to bring to members, we certainly will. Certainly, we do have a number of staff policies, which are all available to members, absolutely, in relation to general management of our staff. So I will look into that particular issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, for allowing me in on your chairman's business. It's a subject that we've discussed nearly every month on here, dog fouling. But this particular one is last week, a 91-year-old lady went to the cemetery to visit her son's grave, who just recently passed away, and there was dog fowl on the grave. Now that it obviously was more stressing for that lady again, having just lost her son. So we would need to be looking at something if preventing this, because this is not the first case. It's not so long ago it was on a baby's grave that there was dog fouling, and it was made public. So we would need to try and do something to prevent dogs from getting into that cemetery to fouling graves, because it's not acceptable. We know we were saying it's not acceptable out in the streets. It's definitely not acceptable on people's graves, and we need to protect them graves as well. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for allowing me in.
Through you, Chair, we have reviewed the signage and working with the dog wardens in terms of people with dogs accessing the cemetery. We reviewed that again, but we took some initial action in terms of additional signage and the staff also approaching dog owners on site. But the issue is, it's open to the public from 2:30 up until 9 p.m. in the evenings now, and it's a challenge just policing that during that time. But certainly we look at it again.
Thank you, Conor, for that there, and I do appreciate the concerns, Councillor Carey, that you have raised here. As you quite rightly say, dog fouling is unacceptable no matter where it is, but it's a very sensitive area here in our cemeteries and graveyards, and really shouldn't be happening. And I mean, it must be worrying for the people and sickening for them when they go to visit their loved ones' graves to find that dogs have fouled on them. But I think Conor will take a look and see what we can do. The next speaker is Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thanks for letting me in on your chairperson's business. I just want to raise the issue of hogweed across the district, especially around CMOs. And the weekend past there, I was out with a few representatives from CMOs and seen that the riverbank along CMOs there is blighted with hogweed. And I would just like to see if officials can come back to us to see what they're doing to combat hogweed across the districts. And I was brought into like this wooded area where it seems to be like what you would term as like a moor plant of hogweed. It's growing up to the sky, it's the height of trees, and we believe that it could be emanating from in here and spreading across the district. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we have brought in a number of reports on that over the year. Hogweed is giant hogweed. Is certainly a dangerous plant, and landowners have a responsibility to eradicate it from their lands, but it's the landowner who has a responsibility to do that. It's a particular problem along waterways because the seeds can disperse, and each plant produces multiple seeds. So if you get high water floods, they can be carried vast distances. On our own lands, we take measures to eradicate giant hogweed. But where it lies on private land or other statutory organisations, it's for those organisations to deal with it. But certainly we'll bring a report back into members in September in terms of our loan lands, and we can look to advise and maybe engage with our landowners about their responsibilities in terms of controlling and managing it.
Thank you for that. We'll move on now to the confirmation of the minutes, and we'll take the minutes for accuracy from page 1 to 12. That one's very. We could have a proposer that we adopt the minutes here. Councillor Boyle, proposer. Councillor Christopher Jackson, second them. Matters arising from the minutes. Councillor Jackson.
I'm Chair. It's page 2, ER 89/20, the COVID-19 works in the key. It's been brought to my attention by colleague Councillor Mickey Cooper that there's concerns in the Bay Road area from a potential licence coming to council for the storage of coal. Now, I know Mickey has along with others, has organised a meeting with council officers and residents in the local area. I know that residents are really concerned that this matter will be dealt with. Won't come to a committee, and it will be dealt with by officers. And Maggie asked me to make those residents' concerns to be brought to the attention of this committee. And I suppose, can we ask the relevant council officers to ensure that a report on this matter is brought to the relevant committee? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Karen.
Through you, Chair, members certainly were aware of this issue. It's actually dealt with under our Environmental Health Department, who reports to Health and Communities Committee. So I would suggest perhaps if a member wants to raise it tomorrow at Health and Communities Committee as well. But certainly I do know that the head of Environmental Health and a number of officers have met various members and residents at the site. So I will raise it with Karen McFarland as well, who's the relevant director in relation to this particular permit process. No problem.
Have enough? Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you, Christopher, for raising this. Indeed, with others, including Mickey Cooper and Eamon, we have been talking to residents and members of the public, and it is very concerning. And notwithstanding that this isn't the relevant directorate, a point that I have made to the environmental health officers is that given that we've got a climate emergency, given all the expertise we've got within this directorate, there has to be better cross-departmental working. As we know, we're going to be talking about the climate pledge later, and we should be moving away from fossil fuels, not enabling it. We should be shifting to renewable sources. There's also the green infrastructure plan within this directorate, and plans specifically for that area of the city. And of course, this is a citywide issue too. It's not just the residents in the area, it's the people that use that area, the riverside. There are other issues that are related. I am aware that DERA have been in recent days out on the site making an investigation about river contamination. Not clear whether that's related to this particular application or not, but there's obviously the river. I take air pollution is obviously in the Environmental Health Department, but it's a major aspect of our climate pledge, and so the impact on climate, public health and all that there. So it's something that, yeah, definitely want to know, and the residents and members of the public want to have peace of mind that our in-house climate expertise and climate officer will be fully engaged in the consultation process too.
Through you, Chair, certainly members, we can ensure that happens. However, this is a specific statutory process with a licence application process that enables certain things to be taken into consideration in the application process, which doesn't include wider environmental issues, unfortunately. And members may want to consider, in terms of investigating and looking into this matter, if that's something that they would wish to take up with central government in terms of that particular licence process as well, and how that could be amended to take wider considerations into concern. But we certainly can ensure that our climate officer is fully aware of this and feeds into the process.
I do get that, Karen, and the problem is there are legislative gaps here too. For example, we don't have any clean air legislation or anything, but we've got our climate policy moving forward, and the regulations that are governing this particular application were 2013. A lot has happened in the environment and climate since then, so yeah, I do take that on board, but there are policy gaps there that we as the council will have to address too.
Councillor McCann.
Yeah, like many others, members of the council, I mean, I've been down and around the place, and along with Mickey Cooper and Mary and others. I met a group of residents, and the reason I was a wee bit late for the meeting today is that I have again been meeting with residents, specifically this time about residents of Colmore Park, which is the supported living a facility there down beside Da Vinci's, and I know that the council officer has visited, I think on Monday, if I'm right, Well, I think it's Monday.
I don't know, it's not in my department, but I will definitely find out.
Okay, and he'll be aware then, sort of, that some of the people there, some of whom are, the phrase goes these days, vulnerable. They're in supported living. Some they're of an age to be vulnerable, or they've got sort of a condition which makes them vulnerable. Now, one can say, oh, well, they're a wee bit hysterical, they're a wee bit hypochondriac. They're not. They seem to me to be very sensible people, and they're seriously concerned about what is happening here. I mean, I could quote and other people along there in Garden City saying that for the first time ever in the last couple of years, sort of when they run their hand across the shelf under the sink, for example, and on top of the sink, they are seeing sort of like coal residue. Now, that needs to be tested. I mean, I'm not saying that somebody can tell that to me and therefore gospel truth, sort of we must all accept it. What I'm saying is that there are some of the residents down there, many of them, sort of are seriously concerned about what is happening and are seriously concerned about what the legal situation is. For example, I'd love to know why they're there anyway. It's a Buncrana-based crowd, so no harm to Buncrana, sort of, but to come up here over the border to plunk down their coal. There's a wider consideration here. The wider consideration is that if we're serious about combating climate change, if we're serious about having clean air, then we should look very carefully at sort of any use of coal, sort of any encouragement of it. And I think there is a strategy would say, well, let them renew their application and then we can deal with these matters by way of objection. Now, if that's the way it's going to happen, okay, we'll coordinate or try to coordinate the objections. All that I'm signalling now is that let nobody be under any misapprehension that this is a crowd of tree huggers or anything like that, or people who are against development who are objecting down there. The objection is very strong, and it is not held by just one or two people. So whatever way we proceed in the future, we should have that on our minds. And if you can't assuage sort of the fears, the concerns of local people, then serious questions will have to be asked by the council and by everybody else.
Thanks for facilitating me being here today too, as I'm not a member of the committee, but I also was at the meeting along with the other councillors, and there was palpable anger amongst the residents at what's going on there at the minute. The fact that they're operating without a permit. Some of the residents, just to back up what Emma was saying, some of the residents were saying that in their clotheslines there was a film of what they believe to be coal dust, and it just doesn't fit in with all the plans that we have regarding climate and regarding all the stuff that's going to be happening down at Boom Hall there, and the proposed new bridge. And it's not, whilst none of the residents, they're not, they just want it stopped. They don't want it tightened up in this or this. They don't want it there. And I have to agree with them. It's completely out of place. It shouldn't be there. Right along a river where we have all these sorts of plants. But they're also saying that late at night there's a lot of traffic, lorries coming in and out of this facility, and given the problems with traffic in that area and the whole Pennyburn thing, it would be absolute ludicrous to continue with this. So I think everything should be done, and it's not just a residents thing. There's thousands of people from right throughout this city and district who go to that area. They walk, they exercise, they walk their dogs. So it's right across the board. It's not just, sometimes you can be portrayed as not in my backyard. That's not the case here. So just to back up with the previous speakers, and thanks again, Chair, for facilitating this.
Chair, top of page 5 there, it's to do with the Killam Recycling Centre. I think it was requested to be on the agenda of the special meeting. Apologies, I couldn't make it, but I don't think it was on the agenda. But I'm just asking for an update on the Killam Recycling Centre, where things are at. Are we any closer to an opening date, or where things lie? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I can deal with that, Chair. As we know, as indicated the last meeting, the solicitors are engaged with the vendors. There's 2 landowners there, and those discussions are ongoing. Information has come forward now from the sellers in relation to how much land they're willing to offer up, and that's been evaluated by the Valuation Lands Agency. So we're now considering that report. The issue, I suppose, for us is we require a certain amount of land, and what's been offered is in excess of that, so we just need to consider that from a value for money perspective. All of that has moved on in terms of that, so we would hope by September we can bring a report to committee with a recommendation at that point and how we proceed.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other matters arising? If not, we will move on to item 7. Isn't that right? Item 7? 6, sorry. My apologies, 6. 6.
Thanks, Chair. To advise members of the monthly update from DERA on progress in relation to Mabai remediation, and to seek members' comments and recommendations with regard to draft terms of reference suggested for the Joint Task and Finish Group involving Council and the Department of Agriculture, Environment, Rural Affairs, DERA, and consideration of use of the Mabai site post-remediation. Members will be aware of the large illegal landfill site discovered at Mabai and previous reports and presentations to committee on this matter. During one such meeting, officers from DERA proposed the establishment of a task and finish group between the 2 organisations to consider the potential use of the site following remediation. The officer team from both organisations have met to consider a draft terms of reference for this group, and this is attached as Appendix 1. Members will recall that they agreed that a report would be brought to each Environment Regeneration Committee to document progress by DERA on the remediation of the Mabai Road illegal landfill site. And members will also recall that they wrote to the DERA Minister requesting a meeting with him to discuss the site and his decision not to proceed with the public inquiry into the site. The Task and Finish Group will only consider how the site might be developed and utilised for community benefit post-remediation, i.e. the group will not be involved in the remediation project per se. The group will take forward the project and consideration of the terms of reference, should these be approved by members, with reports coming back to committee detailing progress on a regular basis. Officers have requested an update from DERA officials in respect of the progress of the remediation on the site to date, and this is attached as Appendix 1. Members will recall that the Council received correspondence from the DERA Minister office advising that the Minister was happy to meet with members of the committee. This meeting has not been organised due to the pandemic. Correspondence has been received from the Minister's office advising that the Minister is willing to schedule a meeting to be held with members remotely. Officers are in the process of arranging a meeting, but members can be verbally updated at the time of committee if a meeting has been secured. There are no other financial equality or related issues in terms of this report. The members' comments and recommendations are invited.
Through you, Chair, members, if I can just add to that, we haven't yet been able to agree a date with the Minister, but our teams are working with the Minister's office to try and actually get that date in members' diaries as soon as possible.
Thank you, Conor, for the report. Obviously, with COVID-19, again, this has been stalled. See, with the sort of relaxation in COVID-19, would it be possible maybe now for the Minister to actually travel to here?
Through you, Chair, members, I think originally the Minister had suggested that a delegation from the committee came up to meet him in Stormont. So it's purely for the committee to decide if you would like to do it like that, rather than we were going to try and organise an online call with the Minister, given the current circumstances. But we'll take direction from members. If members would rather, or indeed invite the Minister down for a meeting, we certainly can do that. But you know, I think originally he had suggested that a number of, like a subset of the committee, came to see him in Stormont at his office, but then with the restrictions they had agreed that they would do it via a Zoom meeting. But members, we will take your direction. Absolutely, I don't mind either way, which way we do it. We can organise it for you one way or the other.
Just Chair, what I'm thinking right enough is the fact that probably more people could attend with a Zoom meeting. But it's just like, I know we're actually glad to be back the way we are here. Like the Zoom meetings just are okay, but no. The other thing obviously was the preparation 2 to 3 years, commencing 18-19 through to 21-22. See, that preparation, I take it that really hasn't started. You know, because the site really, the operations were meant to start in 21. So I'm assuming we're not even at the preparation stage at the moment, which is remediation strategy and approach.
Through you, Chair. Members, the update from DAERA basically is that the court case is due to start in September, the start of September. So basically, if that obviously it goes according to the schedule that it's intended, then they will have more of an idea in September about the actual deadlines and timescales for the project. That's the feedback from DAERA. So.
Okay, thank you.
Date, so to speak, or forecast for the beginning of the criminal proceedings in Belfast against Campsie Sand and Gravel, City Industrial Waste, they might as well be mentioned, and Paul Doherty and a couple of others whose names I forget. Now, that's been pending for a long time, and of course, Karen's right that it is scheduled for either the 7th or the 8th of September. But the words are from the Bar Library and so on in Belfast is that it's not going to be heard because of COVID and because of the backlog of cases, that we'll be doing well, and quoting somebody from the Bar Library, you'd be doing well to have that by the end of January. Now, this thing is going on and on and on. Now, and I'm well aware sort of that while criminal proceedings are going on, that we are very, very limited on what we can do, and in theory at least very limited in what we can say. And sort of I'm chomping at the bit here to say a few things that legally perhaps I shouldn't. There are people involved in this whose integrity I don't take for granted. Put it like that. But I also want to raise here there is the Maboy Remediation Task and Finish group, which we can see here in our bundle of and one thing that I wanted to raise about this is that I see that it has representatives of the Council, of course, of DAERA, mysteriously of the Strategic Investment Board, a crowd that I wouldn't want to see near any project, sort of that I was connected with. So it's about 10 people, I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people. One thing that they all have in common is that they have no campaigning experience whatsoever in relation to Maboy Road. And I'm not the only one in the Council who could say this. I've tramped over that site in the last few years, at least a dozen times, twice with Teresa Kearney of the NIEA, sort of, and with other officials, including Council officials. There's people with great expertise around in relation to Maboy Road. I can't think of any reason why some of the people who have been dealing with and grappling with this problem for years do not appear on the list of what do you call it again, the Remediation Task and Finish Group. That, for example, I think that Paul Hughes of the Enoch Youth Forum, and some people I will know, should be on it. I think that Nuala Crilly of the gathering should be on it. I think that Mary McGuigan of Zero West Northern Ireland should be on it, and there's others but these are people who are experts on this to an extent that nobody on that list is, because they're going around, they've dug up sort of the land there and taking stuff for analysis, and we campaign both the letters to the papers, bringing it up at this council, standing with placards outside the place, etc., generating media interest, generating television programs around it. These are people who know what is happening out there, and all of them, the people that I've mentioned, who live or come from the immediate vicinity. Now, I'm suggesting that that's all I can do at the moment, although maybe if needs be, I'll investigate whether we can take it further, that the people I've mentioned, and many people will know, a lot of people here know who Paul Hughes is, of the Enoch Youth Forum, an environmental campaigner, and so forth, Nuala Crilly. Many of you know, nobody could deny or challenge the fact that these people know what they're talking about, and they deserve to be on it. This shouldn't be yet another example of people fighting month after month, year after year, for a particular objective, in this case an environmental objective, and then they're told, well, there's going to be a group formed about this remediation and so on, and you're not on it. Now, that's not good enough. And I would like to know who took a decision to have a DAERA Council SIB a group formed without any representation whatsoever of the people who have paid most attention to this thing and who, in my view, have got the practical and moral right to be on this committee.
Through you, Chair. Member, if I just come in and clarify a few issues in relation to that. Firstly, members, as you will recall at our committee here, DAERA asked for us to set up a task and finish group with Council to consider the remediation of the site. No group has been set up yet. We have had a meeting with them. Members asked us to set up a meeting with DAERA to consider a terms of reference for a group to look at what might actually happen on the site after remediation. That was the purpose of it. DAERA asked us, could we consider if council officers and DAERA officers could get together to do that. Clearly what we wanted to do was set out a terms of reference of how that might work. So a group has not yet been set up. Now, if members, and absolutely it's within members' right to say we want that to involve other stakeholders or any remediation, then we can take that back to DAERA. But clearly what's within our control today is to either agree to set up this group or not. DAERA requested that members do this. We are perfectly within our rights to say no, we do not want to do that. However, if we want to change that and suggest that it works in a different way, i.e. that involves people outside of council and DAERA, which members are perfectly within their rights to do, we can take that back to DAERA and suggest that our members are not happy to have this post-remediation working group. Because clearly I think their view was that as DAERA, what they would like to do is remediate the site and then that it could be used for some sort of community use. They wanted to work with officers of council to explore basically how that might work, and for example any implications, say for example it was parkland or it was a community facility, etc. What would be the implications for council of taking that on? So that was the point of this group. But if members aren't happy for us to do that, then certainly we're either within our rights to say no, we don't want to do that at all, or indeed we believe that it needs to be done in a different way. So I'm more than happy to take back the views of members to DAERA should the committee want us to do it in a different way.
I do thank you very much indeed. Yeah, what misled me then or confused me was the fact that I see here Mavoy Remediation Task and Finish Group. I see it and it gives the organisations to be involved: DAERA, Derry City, Estevan Council, the Strategic Investment Board, Joint Chairs Jonathan Gray and Connor, and a list of people. That's what confused me then. I thought, well, gosh, as there are. But I mean, if we're moving in a different direction or by a different route, and you take on board sort of what I just said, I'm quite happy about that and to see how it progresses. Let me also say that at the we had a visit about 3 meetings ago from Kildare County Council. You might remember. So they described what they had done, sort of what had been sort of a waste site. And of course they would talk themselves up, but nevertheless they talked a good story. And they were here now at some of the stakeholders' meetings. So again, I think Councillor Durkin was there at a couple of times when I and others have raised the possibility of consulting also, at school children and teachers and so on about this place. And we advanced some ideas about how that might be done to turn this into a real resource for education in relation to the environment, and just in relation to nature. And they said, here we had this toxic, horrible dump, and look what we've done with it. And say that it can be done. And this could be a showpiece. And I did suggest before, and I didn't pursue it, but I'll just mention it again. I think that we should go down to these people who seem so pleased with themselves, and maybe they have a right to be in Kildare County Council, and pay a visit to them. They'll be very happy to entertain us and say, show us what you've done. Show us around the site. The pictures that they showed us were very impressive. But nothing beats going down there and looking at it in real life. So I don't know if it will be appropriate for me to move a motion on that now or to leave it to full council. But I propose that we send the delegation to Kildare County Council to examine with them the progress that they have made in relation to the remediation of waste sites.
Chair. Members, if I can just clarify, is the proposal today that we don't accept DERA's request to set up this remediation group just with Council and DERA, but that we move, as per the draft terms of reference, but we go back and say that we believe that other stakeholders need to be on that group, because I'll need, yeah. So if...
Thanking you, Chair, and thanks to the officers for their report and the work in terms of it. Just in terms of the meeting with the Minister, and obviously conscious that it was agreed, and then obviously with COVID it wasn't feasible. And the Minister has come back to say either through Zoom, but I think even as we come out of, if there was a possibility, and in terms of in the same room, obviously social distance, we would be have a mind of that. I want to come on in a minute the thing in terms of post remediation, but I think in terms of given the time frames that are outlined and even the possible further delay or in terms of a court case and whatever else, I think we all would be concerned given the time that has already taken in terms to actually see us moving forward in terms of actually the remediation of it. And just in terms of, and without getting into the thing about the court case, but the appointment of the integrated team as the way that couldn't go ahead, because that's going to, you would imagine that's going to be needed one way or another, no matter what the outcome is type thing. And I just see, would be interested to see if there's a way that can be progressed as opposed to waiting day, because not only the delay as to when the court case may start, but as to how long it takes for the run to its final conclusion and whatever that may be. In terms of the remediation, and I think it was always at the meetings an understanding that there would be a wider stakeholder involvement as to what goes on that site post remediation in relation to, so I think the proposal in terms to include people who have a wider remit and a wider insight is a welcome one. And I also do think, because the presentations from those council officers who come up from Kildare were informative, but also it would be good to actually go and visit and see for ourselves and interrogate more in relation to, because I just can't mind out in terms of their thing, but they were maybe only halfway through their procedure, if I mind right. So, but even they see that part of it and what they might see as best practice would certainly be helpful in trying to move primarily the actual remediation of this site. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, members, if I could just quickly come into that, we will ask the question from DERA in terms of the integrated consultant team and ask that that's included in their next update in September to committee. And certainly, members, we will look at the feasibility of, given the current circumstances, a site visit for members as soon as is possible in terms of that. I'm happy to do that.
Can I just say, look, my own personal opinion is I prefer the Minister would be invited down here rather than us go up and bring him down, if, you know, with the social distancing, and see how that moves on. As far as the remediation work, I do agree that the wider a grouping that you can get into that when you're doing your consultation, what may be there is very relevant, and I think that is a very, very good idea. So it is. And the welcome to Kildare, so we're going south that, are we? No, happy with that. Item 7. Do you need it?
Just through, Chair. Obviously, we had a proposal. Or is members all happy with that?
Are you all happy with what's on the report? Okay.
Thank you.
Item 7.
Thanks, Chair. This is to update members with regard to the waiver of burial fees and seek comments and recommendations on these arrangements following announcements by the Northern Executive with regard to numbers permitted to attend burial services. Members will recall previous discussions and recommendations with regard to the waiving of burial fees at council cemeteries in consideration of the current pandemic and the restrictions are placed on burials. Members had endorsed the waiving of all burial fees in respect of all interments at council cemeteries from the 20th of March 2020, and for those interred within council cemeteries who had died with the virus in advance of that date. Members had also agreed to review these arrangements at the June series of meetings following updates from officers. The measures adopted by council will apply to council burial grounds only with regard to the waiver of fees. Cemetery and finance staff were able to amend the March 2020 invoices as advised previously, and the June invoices were put on hold. The fees waived for April and May across all councils operated cemeteries amounted to £18,138 and £14,790 respectively, and the June fees are currently being calculated but as advised previously are estimated at circa £15,000. Council had received a query from the Department for Communities with regard to the measure and replied with the details requested. As detailed above, the waiver of fees for April and May has resulted in a financial loss to Council of £32,928. And as advised above, the figure will increase by circa £15,000 per month until such times as Council approval is obtained for the cessation of the waiver. Members will be aware of Council's wider critical financial position as reported to this month's Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, and the continued loss of income from burial fees will further contribute to these financial losses. The regulations with regard to burials were reviewed by the Executive at its meeting on the 29th of June, with a maximum of 30 people now permitted at burials, with church services also permitted to resume. Members' comments and recommendations are invited with regard to the above.
Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief, Chair. Well, thanks for the report, Conor. And clearly we understand the financial pressures that the Council is under. However, Chair, we also must reflect on the fact that the current pandemic has not reached a conclusion. Certainly that would be the view. And, you know, going forward, we again don't know what the future holds, Chair, but I'm going to make a suggestion and a proposal perhaps that for the coming 3-month period that we don't waive the fee entirely, but we make it 50% of what the normal fee would be. That way we are in some sense contributing to the Council's challenge and at the same time perhaps making things a little bit easier for people who are facing financial challenges as well. So it's bearing both in mind and probably trying to be a bit more reasonable.
Your proposal is not to waive the fee completely, but reduce it to 50%?
Well, good, Chair. I had indicated to speak with a mind to reinstate the fee in light of the restriction season and burials, because I'm conscious that there has been a lot of support given to anyone who lost a loved one over the last few months and weren't able to be there at the graveside the way they would have liked to have been. Now, with those restrictions eased, we were minded to reinstate the fee with the caveat that if we did experience a second wave and those restrictions were reintroduced, then we would immediately revisit this topic. But I've just got a question on the back of Councillor Boyle's proposal. I know there's been communication from Department of Communities in relation to support, the financial support for those who may be facing financial difficulties in relation to the cost of a funeral. Would the 50% reduction, would that eliminate them from support from Department of Communities? In essence, would we be placing an additional financial burden on somebody by imposing a 50% fee?
My understanding is that the burial fees are covered as part of that claim. I'm not sure whether that's means tested and who it applies to, so we would need to do a bit more research around that. But certainly, if we applied a charge and it could be recovered by individuals or families, then it would certainly be covered under the scheme.
Thank you, Chair. There's no doubt about it that this was one of the most important moves this council made. It was a moral move we made based on the serious issues we were faced with families not being able to attend their own family's funeral. And this to me was like us compensating the family, giving them that wee bit of extra support and just morally supporting them. But I'm inclined to agree with Christopher because the restrictions have eased and there's a possibility they'll be easing pretty shortly even more for funerals. I think maybe it is time to take it away again. But if we have to reduce the amount of people that can attend funerals, like 10 people attend a funeral, it is desperate. Like it's not good. We would have to consider putting it back on again. But I'm inclined to agree with Christopher on this one. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. And I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Ramsey and Councillor Jackson. I think in the light of the current financial situation and thankfully the great reduction in deaths and thankfully again us on the Strabane and Derry City Council have had quite a low death rate. I think it's certainly time to reinstate the charges and obviously leave it open to be re-looked at again if there is a surge in the autumn. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. I would agree too that we return the fees, but we keep it, as Alderman Ramsey says, we keep it under review because we're not out of this. We're not out of this yet. And no, okay, the numbers is up. Like I've seen funerals with 100 people standing outside the gate, so there are still them restrictions there. But I would be happy enough to support bringing the fees back in, as long as they're kept under review. And see in the meantime as well, see if somebody does pass away with COVID, that their fees be waived. Because obviously what's going to happen is they'll be going straight to cemetery, they're not getting no service. No, and that would be a fee that could be helped that family, you know what I mean? Because they're not going to get the service because of the way things, the instructions, the way to carry out things. I think that should still be kept in and the rest be kept under review as time goes on. Thanks, Chair.
Well, obviously, Chair, it's evident that not everybody shares our view, and that's fair enough too. I appreciate where they're coming from, and in actual fact, certainly from my perspective, I had seen the waiver of burial fees as this council some way making a contribution to families who are facing financial challenges. There still are families out there, Chair, who are facing financial challenges, and my view would have been that a 50% was more reasonable, but if the rest of the committee are of a view that they don't share that. But as again, I just wanted to explain to people where my logic was and where our logic was, and that the hardship situation hasn't gone away for people. Whether we put the fees up or don't put the fees up, but if we put them up, we might be making things more difficult for people. Or not put them up, sorry, but if we reinstate them, I should have said, Chair. But again, look, content to put it to a vote, but really, I would be concerned for people out there who are living and perhaps in some cases living on the breadline already. It hasn't been a perfect situation for all workers and all families. The compensation schemes that have been introduced haven't reached everybody either.
Through you, Chair, members, just to remind members in terms of the department support systems for people who are on benefits, in terms of they will support families a certain amount of money in terms of funeral costs plus the burial fees on top of that. So members, for people who would be entitled to that, whether or not our fee is nothing, 50% or 100%, they still will get the amount, and they will get either nothing, 50%, or 100% on top of that. So just to reassure members in terms of that, and just also to reassure members that should you decide to waive the fees of people who have died as a result of COVID, we should be able to identify those people through the funeral directors, and we could waive the fee accordingly for those individuals. Should members want us to do that, we can do that.
Boyle?
Okay, well, look, I appreciate that, Karen, and I understand all of that as well. But of course, there are people that actually simply don't qualify. We also have to be appreciative of that. I think Councillor Carr's proposal is actually a very good proposal, and I'd certainly be content to second that in relation to COVID-19 deaths and families who've been obviously are dealing with an extremely difficult situation.
That was my argument.
Sort of three proposals.
See, the first day it came in, that was my argument, that the department would still be covered in it. So Karen has just outlined exactly what I was going to say again. Thanks, Chair. Well, there was a proposal. I was only asked to get added on.
That we reinstate the burial charges. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if there's any further restrictions to the numbers that are allowed to attend the burial, then the burial fees would immediately be revisited.
Chair, I had asked that if a proposal would then accept that anybody who passes away as a result of COVID-19, even in times to come, that their fee be waived, and that we do keep the proposal under review. So all I'm asking is that people who die now with the COVID still retains it free of charge.
Happy to include that, Councillor Jackson, in your proposal?
Yes, absolutely. And I know because it keeps in the spirit of the original motion from Michaela Boyle that the support would be given to any families, all families who have numbers restricted to the funerals. And I believe that in the case of somebody who sadly passes away from COVID, the numbers would be restricted at the graveside. So I would certainly accept the proposal or the addition from Councillor Carr.
Come back in again, Councillor Boyle.
Just to say, Chair, one element of the proposal I do support, the other element of the proposal I don't support, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to find a position of abstention on this one. Chair, I do agree with Councillor Carr's proposal, but I don't think we should be raising fees to the original. But there you are, that's all right. So if you want to call a vote.
Do you want us to take your proposal first? I think it's right to take your proposal first. Yep, that's okay. Yep.
Just before you call a vote, can we have the clarity again that anybody in financial difficulty will be receiving support?
Through you, Chair, members, I can't say anyone in financial difficulties, but anyone in receipt of means-tested benefits as per the department. So are we all clear on what the vote? Yeah. So Councillor John Boyle, for, against, abstain. Okay. Councillor Tina Burke, Councillor Sean Carr, Councillor Mary Durkin, Councillor Stephen Edwards,
For.
Councillor Paul Fleming, Councillor Christopher Jackson, Councillor Eamon McCann, Councillor Roy McHugh, Alderman Andrew McCain, and Alderman David Ramsey. So that's 10, 4, and 1 abstain.
Thanks, Chair, and myself again, to seek members' approval with regard to the adoption of a climate change emergency pledge supported by an action plan formalising Council's commitment to its declaration on climate change. Members will recall previous Council Minute C16419 formally declaring a climate emergency and noted that an urgent action was required to address the devastating impact of climate change. Council Minute C16419 further resolved to establish an all-party climate emergency members working group to investigate and determine how Council should respond to the climate crisis and identify mitigation measures that could be implemented as a matter of urgency. Minute ER 18219 formalised Council's response to climate change and highlighted its ongoing commitment to reducing its impact through adoption and mitigation measures. Through the Climate Project, the Council is producing a climate adoption plan for the Council area, the first to do so in Northern Ireland. This will be presented to members for approval during this meeting. Council officers are also working in partnership with their counterparts in neighbouring councils to ensure adoption action taken by DSDC will not have a negative impact on our neighbours. A draft pledge was presented before committee on the 10th of June with the relevant amendments made following member feedback, as per the current draft included with this pack. The All-Party Climate Emergency Members Working Group was established in June 2019 with councillors from the SDLP, Alliance Party, DUP, UUP, Sinn Féin, People Before Profit and Independence. The All-Party Emergency Members Working Group has met 3 times, and the All-Party Climate Emergency Members Working Group has discussed and debated climate change issues globally, regionally and locally, guided by papers prepared and presented by the Climate Programme Manager and the Energy Manager. One of the outcomes of the work of the All-Party Climate Emergency Members Working Group was a Climate Emergency Pledge, which underpins Council's commitment to acting locally to reduce the impact of climate change, and a copy of the paper is included in the papers today, a copy of the pledge. The Climate Emergency Pledge is supported by an action plan which details the actions which Council is already implementing or plans to implement in the immediate future, and a copy of the action plan is also included in the papers. Actions within the pledge will require resources in terms of officer time, commissioning of research, baseline data, external expertise and support materials for training and engagement activities. Approval of the Climate Change Emergency Pledge has no direct financial implications for Council. However, Council should be aware that the accompanying Climate Change Emergency Pledge Action Plan will require adequate financial and personnel resources to meet the commitments defined in the pledge. Implementation of projects identified through the action plan will be assessed from a financial, personnel and greenhouse gas emission perspective and brought to Council separately for approval. Members are therefore asked to adopt the pledge and the associated action plan.
If I can just come on through you, Chair. Members, today we have a further recommendation which should have been included within the paper and it wasn't, and that's actually for members to adopt the climate change adaptation plan, which is attached at your pack today at Appendix 1. I know this is quite a detailed document, and a number of you will have seen it when we've had various the working group with our climate manager. But if members were happy to adopt it today, I know you probably have had a chance already to read it. We potentially could, if you were happy, bring the climate manager to our next meeting in September in order to give you a detailed presentation on the actual climate plan. But we would, I know you've had it in your pack here today, and if you're happy to adopt it, we could arrange for her to give you a full presentation on it in September if that would be useful for you today.
Thank you, Chair. Just some comments. I have actually been in touch with the climate officer this week, maybe just in terms of a couple of changes. It's maybe pedantic to some of the language. It's just really about capturing the urgency, the climate emergency as opposed to climate change emergency, and also in terms of the actions, the drastic actions required rather than far-reaching. Far-reaching is indicative of the consequences, but the actual actions have to be drastic at individual, council, local, national, international level. Just what, and I'm glad some of the points that were made at the last meeting, and we also have met as a climate action group since, have been incorporated into the revised amended pledge. Just can't emphasise enough, as I said earlier, the whole idea of the climate emergency motion moved is that climate implications will be factored into every single decision by council at every level in every department, and the environmental health Part C application in Bay Road is one such example of that. I'm also glad to see that the climate awareness training will be available for staff. I'd be interested to know, will that be what the uptake in that will be, or will it be, how will it be encouraged, or indeed will it be mandatory? I'd like to think that also any reports coming forward, we do have a section dedicated to the different aspects of climate, such as air pollution, although I know that's environmental health, air pollution, land contamination, river contamination. Thank you.
Sorry. When we were discussing it before, one of the issues which came up a number of times had to do with our transport infrastructure. Could I say in passing that other people may be upset about it, but I think that the absence of planes from the sky sort of inscribing a poison sort of behind them crisscrossing the sky, I welcome that. I welcome that. I hope we don't go back to but I also believe that it's very important from the climate point of view, as far as is possible, as far as we can, to eliminate vehicles and methods of transportation which burn up fossil fuels. I'm talking about motor cars, which belch poison also into the air. And we're talking about sort of the case which was made before under this very heading, sort of about rail. The need to expand our rail network and to get people to switch away from cars and towards rail and public transport. I mean, that's standard across the world when people talk about how to address these things. And I think that there is a point of urgency here. Now, I don't want to be depressing to anybody, but I think we're going to find out in the next few days that the upgrade of our rail network is going to be delayed even further. I think we'll discover that to be, and my source for this is not mysterious about it, are workers and trade unionists on the railway, and I've talked to some of them at length in the past couple of days. Let me put it like this: I'd be very surprised indeed if we didn't hear an announcement over the next 7 days that the commencement on phase 3 of the upgrade, that will be from Downhill to Eglinton. They're relaying that and a few other things on top of it. And you say that's going to be pushed back. The beginning of that is going to be pushed back to middle to late 2022. Now, the significance of that is, or one of the significances of that is, and of course we were talking about going and see the minister and all that there, she might well not be, in fact she almost certainly won't be the minister. These things change. There'll be another election before mid to late 2022. So you have to wonder sort of, what I'm saying really is that we want to face this one now, sort of, and I'm suggesting sort of that the council arrange to meet with her, right, I don't care how it's done, but put a stamp on this and saying that we won't tolerate sort of any further delay. After all, we've been talking years before I ever come onto this council. We're talking about the railway line and phase 3, and tramping about the town. Everybody remember that, and there's a lot of support for the initiation and completion of phase 3. If that is postponed, I would have very serious concerns about whether we will ever see it at all. If we don't see it at all in phase 3, then kiss goodbye to the idea of being able to take a train to Strabane and onwards through Oma and the old Derry Road line, and going in the other direction to Letterkenny and so forth. For incidentally, the western corridor is coupled up past Sligo, and we could have sort of, as I have described it, by sentimental way, sort of like a necklace of rail around our beautiful island. Complete. If we don't have phase 3, that won't and can't happen. That's my point. Postpone it again to 2022, and it's distinctly possible that we'll never see it happen. Therein lies the urgency of this. Now, I know there's been no announcement, but having talked to people, and particularly over at the Waterside Station, sitting and talking to trade unionists and trade union officers, I have no doubt at all that we are going to, within the next days, we are going to have an announcement so that phase 3, the beginning of phase 3, is going to be postponed further. I think that that should be unacceptable to us on climate grounds as well as all sorts of other grounds to do with the connectivity of our city. So I'm just flashing that up now, sort of. I think, if you need a motion now, to say that the council should contact the department, contact the executive, and make it clear that any further delay in the commencement of phase 3 of the refurbishment of the dairy plant will be unacceptable to us, and just to say that will be unacceptable to us, and just to get that on the record.
Thank you, Councillor McCann, for that, and I do appreciate the insight knowledge that you have of what's going to be coming out over the next 2 to 7 days. But we have to sort of deal with maybe what we have in front of us today. As are you happy maybe in your proposal that you include that we write to the Minister and get an urgent update on where phase 3 is, and take it from there?
Appropriate, thanks. Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you have a seconder for that, Alderman Ramsey? Councillor Burke, you wanted to come in?
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. And thanks to the officers and council workers for bringing this forward today. There's no doubt that the climate emergency, which this council rightly declared, is a very serious issue and threat to us all. And it's important that we work together if we as a council are hopeful to achieve the ambitious but necessary targets that we have set. What's been brought forward is a structured and strategic plan that we can work towards, that we feel addresses the urgency of the issue. As we all know, climate change is not going away, and it's not something we're really going to get a second chance at. So we need to ensure we do everything we can now. On that, we would be happy to support the pledge, the proposed action plan, and the climate change adaptation plan, and feel that by bringing in you mentioned there, by bringing someone in the next committee meeting, that would be very beneficial as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thanks for letting me in, Chair. I just wonder if Council could provide an update. In, I think it was March this year, Minister Poots announced that he'd be planting 18 million trees across the north, that he will be engaging with councils in doing so. I wonder can officials give an update on whether plans are progressing in our council area for planting additional trees, which does help in terms of climate change, and where those areas of plantation will be. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, members will bring an update and a committee report to the next committee in terms of that. I don't have the information to hand now. I do know that we do routinely plant lots of trees under various different projects, but under this specific DERA Minister's initiative, I'm not 100% sure at the minute what action has been taken within the council area. I do know that there was councils and a number of other stakeholders that the Minister's department was working with, so we'll try and find that information and bring a report to the September committee with an update on that.
Members, I think that's everyone. We have a proposal, I think, from she's way out. Do you want to come in on it, Councillor Fleming?
Yes, Chair, and obviously agree with the proposal. Well, I agree with certainly the sentiment of the proposal, and not to be too precious about a motion that I have come in the full council. But I'm just conscious of us certainly take votes on what may happen, and that could lead to some interesting scenarios type thing. But certainly the sentiment of the proposal, yes.
So I think we did get a proposal from Councillor Burke. Do we have a seconder to adopt? I need a sec. Adopted. Thank you very much. Items 6 to item 8. No, sorry. My apologies. Items 9 to 13 are for information. But if there are any items in there that somebody wants to speak in, please indicate. Councillor Fleming.
Yes, Chair. We'll say a couple of things just in terms of they welcome the reports on the Eglinton Village Green and the Muff Glen, but even just in terms of unconscious, you're saying there are information and they are, but the one in Eglinton Village Green has a recommendation date, so I don't know if that does need because it involves a sum of money. But as I say, just they welcome both reports, and in terms of the Muff Glen one, I appreciate there's still a bit of work to be done in relation to that to try and get that moving forward. But again, with council and the Forest Service and the obviously the community down there, hopefully something can be found to move that forward. But as I say, if the Village Green one needs a proposal, then I would certainly propose it.
Through you, Chair, members, I apologise. That should have been pulled up for decision. So if you're happy to propose it, Councillor Pip, and seconded by Councillor Boyle, thank you very much. Yeah, in relation to Muff Glen, members, clearly, if members want us to write again to DERA in terms of seeking an update in relation to that, we can do that. I know that there wasn't a minister in place the last time that members considered the Muff Glen application. So through you, Chair, members, if you want us to write to the minister in relation to Muff Glen, then certainly we can do that on behalf of the committee.